Hi everyone, and welcome to Nature at Home at the Nicandry Nature Center. Today we're going to be talking about ticks, in particular black-legged ticks, or the deer tick as they're known here, and what you can do to still enjoy the outdoors in areas where ticks are prevalent. Now, I'm by no means a tick expert, nor are the other folks at the center, but we do know some basics about ticks that can help you to stay safe and still enjoy the woods. And that's what we're going to go over today. If you're interested in more science or research about ticks, we'll provide some links in the comments so that you can follow up on your own. Now, to start, what is a tick? A tick actually isn't an insect, which is what most people usually think. An insect has 6 legs. This is a member of the arachnids, just like spiders and mites, and they have 8 legs. There are some other differences as well, but that's a key one for us to know here. So, ticks have a life cycle that starts with an egg, has a larva, and then from larva goes to a nymph stage, and then from nymph to adult. And for each of those stages after the egg, from larva to nymph and nymph to adult, they need to get a blood meal. That is, they need to eat in order to have the energy to turn to the next form. That blood meal comes from mammals. And so that's why you'll see these on animals in the wild, and also why they get onto us and attach to us. They're looking for their next meal to complete their life cycle. That's awful to us, but from the standpoint of nature, they're a pretty successful organism. So enough of them are able to find meals and survive and reproduce that they've become prevalent. From an organism's perspective, that's success. From our perspective, it's pretty awful. I know, 2 different worlds. So these guys are found out in the woods. And we're going to talk specifically about the one everyone around here is so nervous about, and that's the black-legged tick or deer tick. And this is kind of a model of a deer tick, and you will be able to recognize them. They usually have, their legs are actually darker than this, but they have dark legs that have sort of like little bands on them, and the adult form has this red back section, and you know, it really does have that much of a circular divide between the dark and the red in the wild. So that's one of the ways you can know you're looking at a deer tick. Now, the deer tick is an egg form first, and then it turns into a larva. Now, the larva is no bigger than the period at the end of a sentence. So that might be the thing that bites you and is taking blood from you. Pretty weird, right? Because we think of ticks as something we see and remove, but there's a good chance that even if that bit you, you wouldn't know the difference. Now, one of the things about larvae is you don't need to be too scared of the larva form because they don't yet have any diseases. Ticks themselves didn't start with a disease. It's not like a tick hatches from an egg and gives you Lyme disease. They have to get it from a host. Like I said, they're parasites who get blood from a host. And so they attach, take in the blood, and it's if that blood is infected with, there's about 10 diseases in the United States ticks can carry, but Lyme is the one we think about most here, then the next time they bite someone, they'll be able to pass that on. But then tick themselves didn't start from the egg with a disease it gives you. Now, Lyme is very prevalent in white-footed mice, which are very common around here, and which are one of the species that ticks often attach to, low to the ground, where the larvae are found. So that's how so many of our ticks have Lyme. They're getting them from the mice. I hope that makes sense. So then the next stage, you know, the first blood meal of the larva gives it the energy to turn into a nymph. Now, a nymph is going to be about the size of a poppy seed, so still pretty small. But nymphs are the #1 source of where Lyme infections come from because they're big enough, like I said, the size of a poppy seed, but they're so small you may not easily see them on yourself to remove before they embed or may not catch them until later. And although the science varies, it does take some time once they bite you for Lyme to spread into your system. So the next phase, adults, are really easy to see. They're about the size of an apple seed. And when they engorge, they're even bigger. So we tend to see those right off and get them off of us. At least you hope so. So now that we know a little bit about ticks, we're going to head out into the woods and talk about a little bit more about how to prevent ticks and a little bit more about the natural history of ticks. Our first tip today for still continuing to enjoy the outdoors in areas where ticks are prevalent or where ticks are known to carry disease is to know a little bit about how ticks behave. This right here is our black-leg tick or deer tick, and he's doing a common behavior known to ticks, and the way they look for their next host or blood meal is a behavior called questing. They quest. They're up in the trees and they have their legs outstretched, and as you brush by, they're able to grab a hold, and that's how they get on you. So obviously that's a lot easier to do if you're in the brush. So if you're walking off trail in areas such as this one, all through all this brush, there's a lot more likely chance you'll get a tick on you than if you stick to the middle of the trail. So it's always a good tip to stick to the middle of the trail and avoid being in the underbrush. Another tip, if you look around us here, you'll see that we're in lots of leaf litter, and in particular in this case, oak leaf litter. All leaf litter is a good place that ticks are harbored. That's because it's moist and they don't dry out. So it's a great environment for them to live in and nest in. And so avoiding leaf litter is another way you can try to avoid ticks. Now obviously you can't avoid it completely, but again, if you stick to the middle of the trail, which is often mowed or worn down by people, or you stick to nice wide grassy areas like mowed lawns or mowed paths, you're again a lot less likely to find a tick. Now, it's not 0% chance, of course. There are ticks in our lawns and other places. It's just that there's a lot more of them in brush and leaf litter and anywhere that rodents hide, such as down logs or rock walls. So that first tip, middle of trails, avoid leaf litter. So you know to stay towards the middle of the trails, avoid brush and leaf litter where possible. What are some other things you can do to stay safe in the woods? Light colors, like my pants, are always a good idea. They just make it easier to see ticks that may get on your clothing and remove them before they become a problem. Another great idea, and you'll see this one everywhere, is to tuck your pants into your socks. And I know that that looks silly. Believe me, it's not my favorite thing either. But what it does is the ticks will be on the outside of those light clothes and can be easily seen and removed, and it keeps them from going up under your pant legs. Some additional steps you can take are, of course, various bug sprays. And people have a lot of different and strong feelings about use of bug sprays and chemicals. So I'm going to leave that for each of you to decide. But I'll give you a couple of tricks of what we like to use, and then you can do your own research and take it from there. And the CDC does list a number of alternatives and the ways in which you would use them. So if you want to do more research, that's a good factual place to start. Here we have DEET, which is also really well known for mosquitoes, but is considered a repellent that can work for ticks. And a lot of people like to put it around the bottom of their pants and on their pants where they're most likely to run into ticks, because ticks usually hang out in the 2 to 3 foot range on the brush. So DEET or any other bug spray is an option. And then this is a clothing and gear spray. This is meant to be sprayed on your clothes. You let them dry. You do it when you're not wearing them. And then it's good for up to 6 washes. It stays on your clothes. When I'm going to be in the brush and in a tick-infested area, I have a set of extra pants and shirt that I like to use that I just leave this on. And that brings us to another point. It's good to wear closed-toed shoes, not your sandals, long pants, and even a long shirt. And I know that can get hot, but there's lots of great materials out there you can wear that are wicking and not as hot. But those, again, help keep the bugs on the outside of your clothes where you can see them and not underneath. We've learned a little bit about how to protect ourselves from ticks, but what about our pets? They like to go outdoors with us as well, and we don't want them bringing ticks into the house, particularly if they sleep in bed with us like this one does. This is Cade, my dog, and she actually wears a collar, it's a little hard to see right here, that keeps fleas and ticks away. There are other options that include topical liquids that you put between your dog's shoulder blades, pills they can take that prevent fleas and ticks. The choices are really up to a lot of factors, depending on, say, if you have kids in your house who might touch the item, your feelings about different types of preventatives, the thickness of your dog's hair can make a difference in your choice. And these are conversations you can have with your veterinarian to get the best option for you. But definitely in this area, pets should have some type of flea and tick prevention. That's not a substitute for checking them over when they come in as well. Just like with humans, no preventative is perfect, and it helps to take a look and make sure you don't find any ticks on your pets. So you're heading in from the woods. What are some tips you can follow to help with tick control? We really like to use a lint roller on our clothes when we first come in. This is especially great if you're not home and can't change right away. So as we learned earlier, some of the ticks are the size of a period on a piece of paper or smaller. So by lint rolling, we hopefully can get some of those tiny ticks we might not even be able to see off of our clothing before they become a problem. After you've lint rolled and made your way home, you're going to want to take those clothes off as soon as possible. You don't want any ticks that might be on your clothes to end up in your bedroom where you change. So if you can take them off in a mudroom or porch, you don't want your neighbors to see you running around in your underwear, but you don't want ticks in your bed either. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and throw those clothes right in the washer or even right in the dryer on high. The heat will desiccate the ticks and keep them from becoming a problem for you. Uh-oh, despite your best efforts, you got a tick. It does happen. No matter how many preventative measures you use in an area where ticks are prevalent, you can still get them on you. So here we have 3 tick removers. With any remover, you're going to follow the same steps. Get the remover as close to the skin as possible where the tick is, and then pull up steadily and gently until the whole tick has been removed. You want to avoid jerking or yanking on the tick and separating the mouth parts from the body of the tick. If that does happen, just use your tweezers to remove the mouth parts. And no matter what tool you use, as soon as it's out, make sure to scrub the area well with soap and water, or if you don't have those, hand sanitizer. This is a tick twister. It looks like a little tiny crowbar, and you put it under the tick, and just like a crowbar, you gently lift. You can use tweezers. These are a slanted tweezer, but it doesn't really matter. And again, you're going to grip as close as possible to the skin and pull up gently and steadily until the tick is removed. This is a tick key. A lot of people really like these as well. Same concept, but this one you put over the tick, pull backwards until the tick is in the small part, and then go ahead and lift up. Do you need to call your doctor as soon as your tick is removed? That's really up to you, but we like to check in just to see what our doctor wants to say. It's going to depend on the prevalence of disease in your area, how long the tick was in, and if you notice any symptoms. If you do notice symptoms such as a rash or a flu-like feeling, you do need to call your doctor as soon as possible to discuss that with them. Thank you for joining us for today's Nature at Home Tick Talk. We hope you'll feel a little safer enjoying the outdoors in our area now that you know a little something about ticks. And thank you to the New York Power Authority, who funds the Nature Center and its programs to allow us to bring great content like this to you. See you tomorrow.